again, good afternoon. Please bear with me if I do repeat anything that our chairman, Mr. Nkala, has already said, as there are certain overlapping dates and actions that have taken place during this time. Why are we all here today? The answer to that, I think, is that anybody in the room who is not already involved with Tanganda would like to come and understand a little bit about Tanganda and the company that we run in order to make a decision as to whether it's a good idea to invest or to advise others to invest or so on in the company. Sadly, we only have the afternoon with you because to absorb the magnitude of this company and how great it is would take you about 3 days of driving and traveling and looking. So we will just give you a very brief overview. What is Tanganda's vision? Tanganda's vision is to become a leading blue-chip agribusiness and to continue to build a team of top quality management throughout the company, fully support our staff, and fully support our shareholders through the payment of regular dividends. I'm sure that's very important to all of you. For us to give you the Tanganda story, it's probably a good idea that we reflect a little bit on the past, where we started, where we've come from, where we are now, and where we intend to be in the future. As the chairman mentioned, the story begins in 1924 with 3 individuals, the Ward brothers and a Mr. Grafton Phillips. These people had a history in the tea business and found a piece of land in Chipinge known as New Year's Gift. They then imported tea material, seeds from Assam in India, and planted these seeds at New Year's Gift in Chipinge. They continued with this business, but did have some problems because the climate down in New Year's Gift was actually not ideally suited to tea, which is why we no longer grow tea down there, and our tea business has migrated up into the hills where the climate is cooler. So in 1930, Meikles started to buy shares in this company that was owned by the Wards and the Phillipses. As Meikles' interest began to rise in this agribusiness, in 1943, Meikles took over a controlling stake in the company. And that is where the real business began from a Meikles perspective. The company, as was mentioned, was listed in 1963 and then delisted in 2008 for various reasons outside of Tanganda's business. Tanganda has remained a wholly owned subsidiary of Meikles Limited, and Meikles Limited has made the decision to unbundle Tanganda and list it separately for the second time. After the beginning, going back to the 1924s, 1930 events, Tanganda took on 5 estates, 4 new estates after New Year's Gift, and began the business of planting tea in earnest, up until where we are today with a hectarage of 2,100 hectares of tea on 4 tea estates, and each tea estate having its own complete processing plant, factory, etc., etc. They are run individually and they run themselves. Tanganda is the largest producer, packer and distributor of tea and tea products in the country, and has sidelines in terms of bottled water, and has now recently diversified into avocados, macadamias, and coffee. We export to over 25 countries, and export earnings are approximately 72% of our entire income. We have 2 primary divisions. We have the agri division, which produces all the raw material, and we have the beverage division, which is the value add side of our company. The beverage division is based in Mutare, and we have a state-of-the-art factory in Mutare where all of the very latest packaging machines, etc., are housed. The beverage division is run by Mr. Kurirai Chigerewe, who is sitting here with us this afternoon. The beginning of the beverage division in 1960 was probably one of the first big decisions Tanganda made, and that was to go from being a primary producer to being a primary producer with a value add and a direct market into retail. This would have been a huge decision at the time and was definitely a very wise one. At this time, I must point out that Tanganda was and was still for some time after that a completely tea-based company. It dealt in tea and tea products and pretty well nothing else at that time. And the management and the boards at the time did an extremely good job of running the tea business profitably and doing a good job for the shareholders. However, over the years it became increasingly important that being an agricultural producer fundamentally, that we did not simply have a one-legged table. So around about 2010, we took a decision that we needed to diversify into other crops, other high-value export crops. I will go into the reasons for that, and we decided to add to the tea basket, to add macadamias, avocados, and coffee. The reason that we felt that this was a good idea was, one, there was pressure coming in on the world tea market for bulk tea, that is, not the value-added tea, but for bulk tea, because Kenya's production was going up and up every year, to the point where 2 years ago, Kenya produced 400 million kilos of export tea. They are by far the biggest exporters in the world, and the result of this is that when Kenya has a massive crop, there is down pressure on the world bulk tea price. So part of our strategy is to not be too vulnerable to any one crop. Part of the decision for diversification. Secondly, we chose high value crops that are suitable to our area and are well known to be not what one calls fly-by-night crops, but crops that are likely to be there and to remain profitable for many, many years to come. Hence the macadamias, the avocados, and the coffee. These are long-term businesses, they don't come and go. The big advantage as well of this was that being a tea company, we only had a 5-year cash flow, because the majority of our tea is produced between December and March every year, and hence the majority of our income came in between December and March. And then you are left with a long period where you have minimal income other than through your value add side to the company. The addition of macadamias, coffee, and avos was also partly driven because they go hand in hand in terms of the time of the year with which they come to production with the tea business. So Tanganda now, with those 4 crops, has effectively a 10 to 12 month continuous cash flow instead of a 5-month cash flow. Additional to that is the ability to have a very much more regular and stable labor force with qualified people that stay with you continuously, because when you have a business that is busy for 5 months and not busy for the rest of the year, you have a huge influx of labor and then a huge outward move of labor, and not all of that labor returns. The way we operate now is that we have a lot of skilled labor for the tea that have also picked up skills in the other crops, and as and how the tea season ends, we move into the macadamias, we move into the avocados, and we finish off with the coffee. The coffee season ends at the end of November, and the tea season starts effectively at the beginning of December. So great stability all round, good for the people, good for the company. Currently we have 2,100 odd hectares of tea. We have 850 hectares of macadamias. We have 450 hectares of avocados, and we have 185 hectares of coffee. All of these are being expanded shortly and in the future. Right now we have a 250 hectare project going on with the avocados, where we're expanding the avocados by 250 hectares. The macadamias will also be growing as and how we go along. We also, in amongst all of this, have a fairly substantial livestock division, and we also have a big timber industry. And the reason we have a big timber industry is not because we're in the timber business, but our factories use enormous amounts of timber in feeding the factories to manufacture the tea. So the boilers and so on and so forth. So obviously one would say, well, if you are feeding boilers, why would you not do it with coal? The reason is that Chipinge is about as far from Wankie as you can get, and it doesn't make economic sense for us to bring coal from Wankie to process the tea. Therefore we grow our own timber on land that we consider to be marginal for growing high value crops. So we make use of all the poor land with the timber, and that gives us the fuel for the factories. To give you an idea of Tanganda's commitment to itself and to the shareholders and so on, we have spent in capital since 2010 a figure of around about $37 million on new capital projects. Every single one of them highly important and highly beneficial in making us more efficient and effective and capable of delivering the product without any glitches going forward. I'll give you a little bit of a brief on that. We have, out of the $37 million, we've spent roughly $15 million on new plantations and developments. We've spent roughly $2 million on an avocado packhouse. We've spent roughly $5 million on state-of-the-art microjet irrigation for the high-value crops. We've just spent $2 million just recently on a new macadamia processing factory. We have just completed 3 large solar projects in Chipinge. I think we must be the agricultural leader in the country when it comes to this. We have spent $7.6 million to date on those 3 projects, and we intend to do another 3 projects going forward, albeit that they will be slightly smaller than the ones that we've put in. We have a 1.6 megawatt project, we have a 1.4 megawatt project, and we have a 1.3 megawatt project, all of which are up and running as we speak. This $37 million worth of funding has come from basically internal production, borrowings from lenders, and from an enormous amount of input from Meikles Limited through the Meikles board, etc., who have assisted Tanganda very much in going forward with these big projects. So we end up in a situation today where we have spent this kind of capital and we have very little in the line of borrowings as we speak. So from a point of view of investing in something, I think anybody who joins the ship now is doing pretty well, because there's no debt coming with all these lovely assets. On top of that, we've spent an additional $6 million on new packaging material in Mutare for the beverage division. And the beverage division now is as good as any tea packing company that you'll find anywhere in the world, whether it be Switzerland, Germany, or anywhere else. We have equipment that is in fact exactly the same equipment that the top tea blenders in the world and processors use. Tanganda has always revered its people, being its workers. Obviously that swings out to the shareholders, to the salaried staff, to everybody right through from the top to the bottom. And Tanganda has always revered its people as being possibly its greatest asset, and has performed in such a way that you can see that Tanganda is extremely committed to the well-being of anybody that's involved in Tanganda. I'll give you a little bit about that now. We have 1,500 outgrowers who are small-scale farmers who we assist with inputs, with personnel, with advice, machines, fertilizer, all of that, and they grow crops for us for which the inputs are removed and they are paid. So there's 1,500 outgrowers feeding towards Tanganda, and of course the dependents on that are many. We assume that between our own labor force and the outgrowers that we support, Tanganda probably indirectly supports 50 to 60,000 people in the Chipinge district who live one way or another through the fact that Tanganda exists. On the welfare side, with our labor, it's no secret that Zim has been through some up and down times, and as a result of that, in order to improve the lives and the well-being of the people that serve us, we have gone to huge lengths and huge cost as well to make sure that our people get free food packs, get production bonuses, get free clinics, get virtually free schooling, and many other things that Tanganda supplies to its workforce that is over and above anything that is stipulated by government. Tanganda's welfare programs stretch far further than that. In terms of the clinics, we provide free medical support for any Tanganda employee or their relatives, and we supply subsidized medical treatment for people within our area. Through the beverage division, we support a tremendous amount of countrywide activities such as ladies soft netball tournaments, marathons. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the Matari marathons, the Kariba marathons, and all of these. These are sponsored by Tanganda, and you'll often see the Tingamera flags up and so on and so forth. And that is all of Tanganda's part of giving to the people and the communities that give to us. Tanganda has invested heavily in the COVID pandemic by helping with the refurbishment of the main COVID hospital, the Victoria Chitepo COVID Center in Mutare, and Tanganda, along with many other companies, has run out a very extensive vaccination program for free for anybody involved anywhere in and around us that would like to be vaccinated. We have a training center down at New Year's Gift where we continually train people up in various fields, from electrical to mechanical to machinery operators, etc. So our education program goes well beyond our schools. We also have ventured into joint ventures with local farmers who have legitimate land, and we have introduced coffee and macadamias into those projects, and it's a terrifically good thing for Tanganda and for the community around us. And I think in time to come, for those people that do get involved in Tanganda, it would be well worth coming down to visit one of these joint venture programs that we have done on communally owned land with communal people as a JV with Tanganda. Obviously, you can't be an export company the size that we are if you don't have a very strong policy towards certification. We have a whole team of people that are constantly involved in making sure that Tanganda is certified with all of its crops up to world standards. There are very many, but I'm just going to give an example of the Rainforest Alliance certification, Global Gap certification, ISO certification, and then amongst the beverage division, there are many more as well. So certification for us is almost a full-time job. I think that gives you a bit of an idea as to where we are now with Tanganda. And I'd just like to start now a little bit on what would we like to achieve going forward. And not in any particular order, but these are major priorities for us going forward. So for anybody that happens to be part of Tanganda going forward, these are things that they will get used to. It's very important for us from a business point of view that we grow our packed tea market. We cannot be reliant as a bulk tea supplier, because all that happens is we sell the bulk tea to international packers who pack it, put it on the shelves, and add value add to it. We need to be doing that ourselves. So we need to invest in growing our retail side of our tea business. We have in mind in the next short period to put in a macadamia processing plant over and above the one we have. This is known as a cracking unit, whereby, for those of you that understand macadamias, it comes in a little hard brown shell, but once you crack that off, inside you have something called a kernel. That's what you roast and eat. And the world of macadamias is moving from what was a nut in shell market, and has been for the last 20 years, much more into a kernel market. So for us to keep pace with world trends, and also to be able to open doors into countries that we aren't already in, I'm thinking specifically North America and countries such as Canada, we need to go into the cracking business, which will then make us sellers of kernel and not nut in shell. Traditionally, the majority of macadamias have been sold to China as nut in shell, but that business is dwindling, and the kernel business is growing by the day. So we have to keep up with the times, move in that direction. Of course, a cracking plant is not a cheap piece of equipment, and we will have a listing mechanization program for the tea, which will be basically involving quite a lot more high-tech equipment for the harvesting of the tea, in order to not have bottlenecks when the weather goes bad, or we have various other problems, whether they be pandemics or whatever might cause us to get behind with tea production. We also have in mind to mechanize our timber operation, because although the timber operation does not directly bring income to Tanganda, it being our fuel, it is a huge cost to us at the moment, because we do not have it mechanized the way we should. We would like to complete our irrigation projects so that all of our high-value crops are under electronic microjet systems, which are the most efficient that one can find currently in the world of agriculture. We would also like to continue expanding our plantation footprint, and as and our opportunities arise, we will do so, whether they be through JVs or whether we're able to expand in other ways. We are always open to that. We would also like to, at some point, turn our livestock unit into a fully commercial livestock company, to add value to that, as we have a very nice basis for a good company. We also remain open and with our eyes and ears always open to any other opportunities that may arise, i.e. crops that we aren't currently growing that could fit into our environment and also fit into our program of crops in terms of timing, income, personnel, etc. So if the right things arise, we will always look at them. So we may develop into other crops going forward if we see something that fits the bill. For that, I think I'll thank you for listening to me, and I hope it gives you a slight idea of what Tanganda has, where it's come from and where it would like to go.